Welcome to the Virtual CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping service-based businesses achieve success. Are you a business owner interested in learning how to scale your business? Has your business reached over $1 million in annual revenue? Then this podcast is for you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast. Today's guest is a special one. So special for me, especially because when I first started at Summit 6 years ago, another CFO was on Tiffany's account, and I came in to help out as an accountant. So I started off as an accountant on Tiffany's account, doing some of the invoicing and some of the behind the scenes work for her. So Tiffany and I have known each other quite a while here because I did work on her account. But we have Tiffany Farriss here from Palantir. So Tiffany, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your company?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. It's been 6 years. Wow. Oh my, time flies. What even is time anymore? Who knows? I'm Tiffany Farriss. I'm the CEO of Palantir.net, and along with George Demet, who is my cohort. He's also my husband, and we've been running Palantir now for 25 years. And so we are a digital consultancy. We're based in Chicago, but we operate all over the U.S. and we've been doing this now for 25 years. So it's been a great ride here, and we work to solve really complex problems for a lot of government agencies, higher ed, as well as healthcare organizations. So
how many people up to now?
Sorry.
How many people in your organization now? How many team members do you have?
Mid-30s.
Mid-30s. Wow.
Yeah.
So growing pretty steady. That's awesome.
Have
you had? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's been a really interesting ride. I have a rather unique perspective on growth and that I've come to in the last few years. I mean, growth was never really something that was an end goal in itself for George and I. Mm-hmm. And what I've come to realize is that I now see growth as not, we never saw growth as a measure of success, but now I see growth as a potential outcome of success. But it isn't the only measure that would tell us that we were being successful or not.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Because that's an interesting concept. So it's an outcome, not the actual driving force, but the outcome of success. What do you mean by that?
Well, so, one of the things that we've always talked about is that for us, we think it's really important that we retain the ability to say no, right? That at a certain point when you are solely focused on growth, there can become this drive that you need to constantly feed the beast. And that can compromise your ability to be looking for the right projects or the right team members. And in essence, that can compromise your culture. And for us, the experience of your clients, the experience of your team members, that is what ultimately drives what those who work with you believe, and then that determines their actions. And for us, kind of understanding that cycle continues, that's what really drives that sustainable growth. And so, George is a third generation entrepreneur, and I like to admit that I didn't have a lemonade stand as a kid. So this was not what I was going to do at all. This is a very unusual path for me. I wouldn't have seen it coming. But for him, it's really in his DNA. Literally both sets of grandparents ran their own businesses. His parents ran their own business. He was truly never going to work for anyone else. He likes to joke that he is unemployable. Right. So he had to make his own job. And, so he understands that growing and maintaining the right culture is above all the most important thing for him and for a successful, long-lived company. And so I think that's something that I've certainly learned from him, and that I think he has learned, from his family, and I appreciate that. And so that's really for us, kind of understanding that we have to have We have to have the right pieces in place before we pursue or even allow growth to happen. It's a really interesting mindset to have.
So
Yeah, it sounds. Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, I want you to expand on that ability to say no, because I think that's something that every single business I work with, and even like at Summit, something we talk about all the time. So I'm curious, kind of why would you say no? What type of clients would you say no to? And then B, has that changed over time based on your company, based on your culture, or has it always been pretty something you've kind of had set in stone?
It hasn't. It's not been the same over time, and it's certainly. There have been hard lessons that we've learned, right? You want to say yes. Opportunity can be hard to come by. And I also think that there are times when the reasons to say no can be painful, right? Especially if the reason to say no is that you're not ready yet.
Right.
When you can see that otherwise all the other conditions are there, but you aren't ready yet. Like that's a really painful one. I remember, in the 25 years, Palantir has had layoffs once, and that was an incredibly painful moment. And, Jamie, you might remember that one, or I think maybe you came on board right after that, but it was really hard for me as an owner to do. And it was because we had said yes to these amazing opportunities, and we did them really well. But what we hadn't built as a company was a sustainable engine to support the company at that size, at that level. Because one of the things that we do as a company, when we're thinking about the experience of being a Palantir, is we make a commitment not just to the person, but to the position, right? We want to think about sustainable growth. We want to think about, okay, even if we didn't find the right person, or we found the right person and it's time for them to go to their next opportunity, we want to continue to grow and to be that size of company, right? We don't want to be a company that scales up and scales down all the time. That level of churn is different. We don't think of ourselves as an agency. We think of ourselves as a consultancy. And that's one of those kind of key differences. It's one of the reasons that we don't outsource. We're not a nearshore. We're not an offshoring firm. We do our work in-house. And it's because we build these processes, we build these procedures, and we really invest in our team in that way. So, we had scaled to do these amazing projects, and we had 3 really amazing, large-scale, complex projects, but we hadn't built the operational infrastructure behind them to have the sales behind them or the relationships with those clients, that those would be ongoing projects.
Oh, so
and
they fell
all
off.
ended at the same time.
Ouch.
And it was a cliff. And it happened at the same time that Drupal 8 was delayed. And it coincided with the overall shift from of control of a lot of the dollars that used to run into Drupal from the CTO suite over to the CMO suite. And so a lot of the decision making that used to prioritize, really technically innovative firms, and they would make these decisions on it, who was really the most innovative and stable technical decisions. Really they weren't prioritizing the things that we had to offer anymore. So we had not kept up with the way decisions were being made. And so the table stakes had changed for the kinds of projects we were looking to do. So we really had not invested in our in our operations. We hadn't stayed current with the market, and it was just super painful. And so kind of and the way that we had grown wasn't it wasn't balanced, right? I don't know if you've ever seen this great French animated feature called The Triplets of Belleville, but in it there's a cyclist, and he's a mountain cyclist, and so he has he's really a great climber. So he has these huge thighs and teeny tiny little weedly arms. And he's really, really great at getting up those hills, right? And so, because that's what he's built his body to do, is to get up hills, right? And so in a certain way, Palantir was like really built to get up hills, like really great technical hills. And what people needed in the market at that time had changed, and they needed more balanced firms. And so we were built to do a certain kind of project that really they weren't looking for from us anymore. So I had to really reshape the firm, and it was a painful moment. So I had to, I really had to learn. I had to step back and say, okay, as I think about us as a firm, how do I keep an eye on what we say yes to, and the impact and the exposure that creates for us as a firm and for the people and their families who trust me
for
to
sure.
pay attention to those things.
Yeah. So
reshaping your firm, I mean, you're reshaping it not only internally, but then you've got to reshape it on the marketing end, right? So
That's right.
This is the new us. How quickly can you steer that ship and make that change? Because we have a lot of people that say, hey, yeah, I want to do this now. How long does it take to do this now? Does it take, can you move that ship 3 months, a month, 6 months, a year? How long does it really take to really kind of fully make that transition?
Any kind of organizational change takes years. We started with an external perception. And fortunately, we have years to pull from.
Sure.
That helps, right? When you have a huge back catalog, you start to emphasize different parts of your portfolio differently. And that is certainly an advantage we have due to our longevity. And I'm very grateful for that. And we also had team members who've been with us through that and who weathered that with us and through that kind of painful time. And I think that was kind of the start of it. And so externally, we were able to come through. And certainly the fact that we have through it all remained deep contributors to open source has always given us not just a community, but a platform as well. And so it allowed us to talk about ourselves differently. And as we grew into those shoes, I think that was certainly very helpful. So I think externally we were able to start establishing that fairly quickly, within about 12 to 18 months, I would say.
Okay.
And then that gave us the space to start to think about it ourselves differently and start to do the internal work, right? You have to do the external work to a certain extent and start to think about what that does. And then we started to use that opportunity as we started to work with those clients to really focus on what the client journey needed to be and to reshape ourselves to match what the client's expectations were and to really match what their expectations were and to be a much more attuned firm to what they needed and to really define ourselves. I think one of the big lessons that I learned around that time was that we had been somewhat of a chameleon as a firm in the Drupal space. We'd never really kind of taken a stake. Were we a software firm, because we did have such an outsized role in Drupal especially for our size. We had an influence on Drupal, the product, so were we a software firm? So some people, both team members and clients, would come to us because they really admired those chops. So was that what we were? Were we just another agency? Because we certainly can do work like that. Or were we a consultancy where we could do these kind of projects that were really complex and involved more than just the technical piece? We were helping people to solve deep business problems. What were we? And I learned through that we had the opportunity, and not just the opportunity, but it was truly down to George and I. We had to define what we were so that people knew who they were working with and could make that choice. And sometimes it's a little scary, when you do put yourself out there, when you define yourself, then people can reject you and be like, yeah, that's not what I wanted. But it's been a really rewarding journey to be on. And we've been reshaping the firm internally and going through this kind of organizational change for the last kind of 3.5 years. Has been part of our kind of agile transformation. We had always done agile in our projects, and we've become much more of an agile organization over the last 2.5 years. And I do credit, my relationship with Kristen and Summit is a big part of that. Prior to really building those relationships, I had to run all the kind of finance stuff on my own. And I think what has been really helpful for me is that I get to stand on her shoulders. I get to ask the questions. I get to go to next level questions. I get to think about the next pieces, and I don't have to reinvent the wheel, because I will. I will, I got to give all my spreadsheets over, and I don't have to build the spreadsheets. I get to look at the spreadsheets now, and so it's been really helpful. And just to have a thought partner, but two, then I can start to think about other things and think about the kind of firm I want, and think about, how do I solve these kind of big picture questions in a way that's authentic to us. So, for us, one of the big driving questions was, how do we create a human-centered firm that isn't dependent on any one person?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so you and Chris have been working together for a long time, and so I think you mentioned that prior to that, you were the one doing the finances. So I'm curious, for the perspective of someone who's had the same CFO for, if I was 6 years, a little longer than 6 years, like, how long did it take you to give that stuff over? And then on a separate question, how long did it take you to trust that the information coming in was worthy enough to make decisions off of?
I gave it over immediately. And so there was
tough, wasn't it? Was that tough? Or?
Well, I'm a trust but validate kind of gal. So I will trust quickly. The question is, when do I stop checking the work? Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm a big believer in trust, and Kristen is such a trustworthy partner, right? That's not Jody, Kristen, really. So,
for 20 years, yeah.
So it is not hard to trust Kristen immediately. No. And I think when I stopped checking was when I just realized that she started to bring things to my attention before I had noticed. Right. And I just realized it happened subtly over time. I would realize that I just hadn't gotten to it yet, and it didn't bother me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just one of those moments that, where I didn't feel like I needed to anymore. And it was just just a release and a relief, honestly, for me. And what it did is it gave me permission to start to focus on how others might be able to understand what I was doing. So when I was doing it all on my own, all of my effort went into just making the calculations, making sure that we were on, that the budget was there, that I was tracking everything. And I didn't have any time. I didn't have any bandwidth left to communicate it to anybody else. I was like, yep, we're good. Trust me. That's all I had effort to do at the end of the day. It was like, yep, we're good. Trust me.
Yep.
And let alone have anybody else I could talk to bounce ideas off of, or to say, what if we did it this way? Or what if this happens? Or what about this crazy idea I have? Or, or heaven forbid, what if we did this other thing? Or have you ever heard? Right. And, I'm now at the point in the relationship with Kristen where we'll model things, and I'll say, oh, hey, Kristen, what about this? So what that's allowed me to do is, even pre-COVID,
right,
last year, I now can do things where I never even dreamed of. I was all up in legislation. Like, you know, I mean, it is a CEO's job to work on the business, not for the business.
Right.
Right. And so I take that seriously. That is what I do. I work on my business. And I was like, well, you know, about half the people in the United States work for small businesses. And if we want to see the kind of progress, we want to see the kind of changes that, you know, we need in the workplace, small businesses have to be able to do it. Right. And so I take that really seriously. I see Palantir as an innovation center, not just in terms of the kind of work we do, but also the work we do like as a business. So this is part of how I get to innovate is I create innovative policies. So part of that is, you know, doing things like making a commitment to a person and a position at the same time. Like doing that's hard. Like we do hard things all the time at Palantir, and not just in our technical work, but as a business, we do hard things. And so, you know, I would do things like, okay, well, I did some research. I was like, well, okay, we're gonna do 529 matching. So I was down in the code. I saw somewhere that Illinois offers tax credits for that, but I couldn't get the documentation. So I'm digging through the Illinois statutes to find this to give to Dave. I'm like, Dave, here it is. He's like, where is it? I'm like, here's the statute, Dave. Like, you know, and so then I roll that policy out for my team, you know, and so then that served me really well when we rolled into COVID. Because then I was able to say, okay, I'm going to dig through the CARES Act and I'm going to figure out, because as a professional services firm that's gender balanced at every level across every discipline, you know, one of the biggest threats to us was, you know, there was certainly a lot of uncertainty, you know, as we looked through February and March. It was like, well, okay, one, we have business uncertainty, but there's also, you know, if we were to get sick, and also with, you know, schools closing. Over 1/3 of my team have small children, myself included. Okay, I need to maintain my team. So, you know, George and I, we talked about, we called it Project Codename Armadillo. And if you imagine an armadillo curling up in a little ball, that was the vision for the company last year. And I was like, okay, people, this is what we trained for. This is why we prepare. This is what our cash reserve is for. And so this was the commitment we made to our team. We said, look, this is, you know, we do, you know, as many of your clients do, we have a weather report. So every quarter we tell our team how we're doing. And so at the end of March, I did a climate report.
I was going to say, that would have to be scary.
Like, weather is what happens all the time. This is the climate report.
That's great.
This is the trend. And let's look at the really big picture, because, you know, okay, we have cash. Like usually I'm telling you where our cash reserve is at. And now I'm going to tell you why we ever make a cash reserve and how I'm intending to spend it down if I need to, and how long it can go, because I'm not planning to lay anybody off. And I'm not planning to reduce anybody's salary. And in fact, I'm planning to reduce our billable commitments. And I'm planning, because this is going to take a toll on all of us mentally.
Right.
And I'm also really good at digging into legislation. And so I'm going to go dig into legislation, and I'm going to figure out how we're going to survive this. And that's what I do, because I work on the business. So you all do what you can do to take care of each other, and you take care of our clients. You do that, team, and I'll take care of the business, and we're going to be fine, and we're going to come out the other side. That's our plan. And then we're going to call it Armadillo.
How did the plan go?
The plan went amazing, and we did.
Awesome.
So I was like, here's how we're going to use the Families First Coronavirus Recovery Act, paid family leaves. And so I was in there with Kristen, and I was modeling it with Alyssa, and, you know, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan. Like, we used all of that. And every day I was in there, and every week I was meeting with them, and I said, okay, here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to maximize it. Here's how we're going to fine tune it. And our team, you know, even our lawyer, I had him on there, and we were digging into the Department of Labor. And I said, even before they'd issued their guidance around intermittent use of the paid leaves for childcare, we knew how we were going to do it. We knew how we were going to justify that. And so we were allowing folks to use it to dial down their schedules, to be able to do hybrid learning. And our team came through 2020 in a much better place. Last year was not easy for anybody.
No.
It was not easy. And certainly our revenues were not what they were the year before.
Sure.
But we were fine.
Yeah.
We didn't do any layoffs. We didn't do any salary reductions. We didn't qualify for PPP round 2. And we don't qualify for any, ERTC.
Right.
We didn't qualify last year and we don't qualify this year. And I was like, we just did a weather report this week, yesterday, in fact, for our company. And I told the team, I've been telling them about these safety nets. I'm like, look, these are the safety nets that are out there. And they knew that I was paying attention to them and that I had all sorts of safety nets. I was even looking at state level safety nets. And I said, I am going to knit us a Scandinavian style safety net if it kills me. Like, I'm just going to knit this from scratch.
Yep.
And I'm like, we didn't need it. I know it's there. I'm going to pay attention to it, but we didn't need it because of your work and our work. But every step along the way, every week, I'm like, okay, Alyssa, okay, Kristen, here's my thing. Here's what we're doing this week. But I can do that because they've got everything else under control, right?
Right.
And so it's like I get to focus on the pieces that allow us
important.
to be innovating, to be moving it forward, so that I can, avoid the pitfalls. I mean, so many women and parents have left the workforce because of the strains of the last year. And don't get me wrong. I mean, even on our team, parents are under strain. But I do think that the way that we have implemented the leave last year, the way we implemented the leave again, I mean, it was optional. Like, I was sitting there on what was it, like right over break, because we closed down between the 24th of December and January every year. And if I was sitting there, I was watching the omnibus bill. I was like, are they going to extend it? Are they going to extend the fees? And they did. And I had to dig through that stupidly long bill. And I was digging in there. I was like,
the whole thing, or you read?
Oh yeah, I did.
Oh, geez.
Oh yeah, it was funny. I was like, okay, how are we going to do this, right? And how are we going to? So I dug through it, and then I wrote my note to the team, and then had Google send it for me, like at 8 a.m. the day we came back, so that nobody got it first. And then how we implemented the extensions on our we do an FSA, flexible spending.
Okay.
And so there were optional extensions for that. Like, so it just felt like I was constantly explaining all of these things, but I'm really good at that now. Right. So you want to know, I read these bills all the time. So, you need legislation that, like, I've got a really good screen on it, but I get to do that. And then I get to go back in, and then we flow it through. But we were really, it created such a help for the, for last year, that even with, I never went to the team and said, hey, we're going to cut expenses.
Right.
We didn't make any intentional expense reductions. We didn't reduce any salaries. We didn't do any of those things. We were doing optimized planning around government incentives. And we also allowed any client who needed to pause work to pause work. We were just about taking care of people.
We did the same thing. Yeah.
And it worked out well.
The great thing you're talking about there is planning and communication, right? So you planned, you communicated to your employees, you communicated to your clients. And I think it was I listened to the last, couple minutes of you talking here, and obviously anybody listening would be super motivated. I think that was a great present, or talking from an awesome owner. And I can tell you from my point of view, we do meetings each Friday with all of our CFOs, and we talk about certain things. And sometimes Kristen will come in with a question, and like the second she starts asking it, I'm like, that is such a Tiffany question. I'm like, this is coming from Tiffany, or sometimes it's not even a question. Sometimes it's a thought that you had that you gave to Kristen, that she's like, hey, has any of your other businesses thought about this thing? And I'm always like, oh, that's a Palantir thing, isn't it? So you can always tell the way Tiffany's mind works. And so we're kind of up against time here, but like I said, those last ideas you had is really key for any business owner out there. So any other final thoughts you'd love for our listeners to hear?
I think it's just about understanding what your goals are. Why are you running a company? It's hard.
Yeah.
Hard things.
Oh,
And remember,
big
at
time.
the end of the day, hard things are hard. And, for me, it's being really clear about what are the things that uniquely I'm looking to do and that we are looking to do at Palantir, and finding others who do the things that they do with the same kind of passion. You can't do everything. And, I think that's where those kind of partnerships, and when you find them, they're super key, and they will unlock it for you. Right. So one of the things I really appreciate is like Wardley mapping, and from Simon Wardley. And one of the things he talks about is you want to be really clear on the things that are commoditized or productized, and that aren't things that are unique to your business. And the kind of, CFO support and accounting support, we're a mid-30s firm. I really shouldn't build as much as I'm interested in it and I love it, I really shouldn't build an expertise in it. Right. And that's that's why my partnership with Summit has been transformative for us. And for years, we've only worked together, 6-7 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I resisted for many years. I was like, oh no, I can do it. I can do this. Right. But by taking it off my shoulders, it's the opportunity cost, right? What else have I been able to do that is unique to my business, that it does meet my vision for the kind of company I want to run and the kind of innovation as a small business that I want to be able to do, because I'm now not doing that thing. So every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. Yeah. And it's be thoughtful about the things that you're saying yes to, and be really clear about the things that then you're saying no to.
Great. That's a great final thought. Jody, what about you? Final thoughts from you?
Like, wow, this has been pretty exciting. I should work for you. Think we can get Kristen off the key?
Yeah. That's what Jody and I are both thinking is, how can we take over?
I'll come to work for you. That's great stuff for sure. You really took a real scary situation and took the fear out of it, is what you did. Because by taking the fear out of it, you found facts, you found ways of, hey, we're going to make this work. Because I think we all run into those issues, right? Where things just hit us right in the face. Like, wow, where'd that come from? The pandemic was one big one. Maybe an employee shortage might be another big one. And then you took the fear out of it and said, hey, we're going to figure this out. Here's how we're going to figure it out. Here's what we're going to do to get it figured out. Here's how we're going to pace it to figure it out. And it didn't seem like you panicked. You just simply went on and, hey, we're going to get through this. I'm not worried about it. We've got our cash reserve put in place. That's what it's there for. And we're going to figure out how to get out of it. And guess what? No one here is going to get hurt because of it. And you succeeded, which is a huge credit to you, because I don't know that I don't know how many firms out there would have not panicked when you did not. That's a lot of credit for you. So I'm real excited to hear that, and real proud of you. And like I said, wow, that's
awesome. Well, Jody, Tiffany, thank you very much. I think this will be a high downloaded show. I'll definitely encourage all my friends to listen to it, because like I said, I definitely got a lot out of it myself. So I appreciate you guys, and thanks for
I'll encourage my only friend to listen to
it. I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Oh, you bet. Thank you.
Enjoy this episode? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving virtual CPA success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.